change our guidance. And so I think being more transparent and regularly communicating about what we know, what we don't know, and how we're going to close that gap.
The COVID guidance was challenging. Initially being told not to wear masks, then being told to wear masks, trying to understand the context in which one should wear masks. I mean, these were, even for folks who were really looking to the CDC for guidance, it began to feel like, how can I understand or even trust what's happening here? Why was that so hard?
It's because we kept learning more about the virus and how it was transmitted, how you could protect yourself. And, at different times, it was much more prevalent in the community. It depended on vaccination rates. And so we needed to make sure that we were sharing what we knew as soon as we knew it. And when we saw that people could transmit when they were asymptomatic, or that there were some breakthroughs for people with vaccines, that's when we knew we needed to update our guidance to reflect that.
Do you think that the CDC was overly concerned with criticism, potentially criticism coming from lawmakers, from the general public?
So, with public health, I believe we always face criticism. And for us, it's really about just how do we make sure we're responsive to those who we take care of, and that's the public. How do we make sure that our health departments, our patients, providers have accurate, unbiased data and science and guidance? And that's what we care about, and that's what we want to continue to do and to strengthen and to work with all of our stakeholders on.
You kind of laughed. Public health will always have critique, and criticism is part of it, right? It's part of taking on the role of being a public health professional. But do you think it's gotten worse, more challenging, more difficult, or has sort of the world of so much data, information, communications made things easier for the CDC?
So I think it's both. I think we now have a lot more venues to communicate in and to get that data in. But on the flip side, with things like social media, you can see people that may not be as versed in data or science also, sharing opinions and having some misinformation out there. And that can make it difficult for people to determine, who to trust, who to listen to. And so that's where we have to be really clear and very focused and working with partners to make sure that our messages are getting out there and that people understand how to protect themselves, what to worry about and what to not worry about.
I so appreciate the effort to take data, take a self-evaluation, make changes. But CDC is a big organization, and it can be hard to change policies and practices even in your own household. What does it actually mean to implement change?
So you're right, change management is never, ever easy. But we're really asking everybody at the CDC to lean in. And I've been doing all hands with many of the different centers to really talk with everybody about what does this mean for your unit, your center. And what we're trying to do is break down those silos so that it's not which part of CDC that you work in. It's that we work across CDC and that we're collaborating and that we know that we're responsive to the American public and how can we do that better. And I just think that we should always be doing this regardless of what agency, where you work. You should always be seeing how can we do things better and just realizing that, now with COVID-19, we've seen these areas we can improve in, and that I know that our awesome staff who've been working tirelessly 24/7 are going to continue to do that and lean in to really see how we can be quicker, more responsive, and just really pushing the envelope in a lot of these areas.
Let's take a quick break with the CDC. When we come back, it's the takeaway. It is 12:48, and you are listening to The Takeaway on WHYY 90.9 and streaming on the WHYY app. Happy Friday, everybody. I'm Cherry Gregg. Coming up at 1 o'clock, bringing down inflation requires some economic pain. That's according to Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell. We get the latest on what he's said today. Plus, a roundup of all the politics this week in Washington. In case you missed it, in local news, Pennsylvania drivers need to make sure no part of their license plate is obscure. This comes after a state appellate court ruled this week that police officers can stop a driver if any part of the license plate is hidden. Plus, coming up at 104, companies and agencies responsible for PFAS pollution could be held more accountable. We'll explain how. First, a look at the CDC reorganization. That's next on The Takeaway right now. It's The Takeaway, and I'm Melissa Harris-Perry. We're back with my conversation with Dr. Deborah Howery, the acting principal deputy director of the CDC. And we're talking about a recent announcement of a reset at the CDC. Can you talk with us about monkeypox, what's happening right now, and ways that the CDC may adjust moving forward?
Certainly. So I think this goes back to, with our reorganization. And that's like, how do we have data faster and with states? And how are we updating guidance on things like vaccination? Even our publications, we have a publication coming out this month on monkeypox. The data was collected this month on sex with men. And we just know to get that data out as quickly as we can. Even our testing, we had an assay already in place for monkeypox, and we were able to scale it up with private laboratories in a matter of weeks.
I want to talk about one aspect that I think is challenging around monkeypox, and clearly in the attempt to learn and understand the failures of public health in the context of the HIV pandemic,